Coming up soon is the start of the second heat of the Regina Chains Production Bike Sprint Series, one of the action-packed support events for the Swan Insurance Series. Heat 1 has already been run and won by Neil Chivas on the Suzuki from Len Willing's Kawasaki and Richard Scott's Yamaha. The first heat this morning required a restart when Philip Watt, Philip Lamont and Philip Cutler all came down on lap 1, followed on 1 lap later by a fearsome crash by New South Wales rider John McFarlane. Let's see the action now.
Starter now in control. Field in readiness. 4 rows. And a false start, but 49 leaping away with Len Willing at the helm, but won't lead into the first corner.
It looks as though it's Rod Cox there, but underneath comes Richard Scott and down. Down go several riders.
Stevens could have been one of those, I think.
Difficult to pick up the numbers, but number 77 Neil Robinson on the Action Suzuki has won. Just
right in the middle of the field there, I think Phil Watt on 15.
He was the first to go, and then number 77 collided with him. That was Robinson, who was brought down. But we think no serious injuries. It looked as though the riders were up and walking as we watch Richard Scott on the 750 Yamaha lead the field across the line at the end of the first lap.
For a 54.3 second standing lap, and leading then on 34 from Rod Cox on the Honda. Cox with a big job, because the Honda, probably the least manageable of these bikes, but running an 18-inch rear wheel, which it wasn't allowed to do in the Castrol 6R because it's not the standard wheel fitted to the bike, and it works certainly much better on that wheel.
And this is exactly what Scott wanted, because the Yamaha hasn't quite got the punch out of some of the corners that the Suzuki and the Honda, but he knows that if he can get a smooth, clear road in front of him, that he can make best use of the machine and perhaps get away from the Hondas and the Suzukis.
Well placed there, Neil. Len Willing at least on 49. Neil Chivers is in there too on 56. It's a stop. Pulling the race up because of a crash on another corner as well. Ambulance in attendance. Rider.
And there's a rider down at the end of the straight, and that wasn't the first corner, first lap accident. That must have been on the second lap, because that was a long way from the first lap incident.
In fact, that was John McFarlane, the New South Wales rider, who apparently saw a yellow flag there, braked severely, and the bike absolutely end-for-ended. And as Robbie Phillips, who was watching horrified, said later, he was head-butting the ground every time it went over. But he was up okay, actually walking around by the time the ambulance men had finished with him. So remarkably, he's okay. The field is ready for the second heat now, again to be held over 15 laps. That's 24.2 kilometres. And from an original entry of 46, 38 who lined up at the start of that first one, 32 who lined up at the restart, we've got 32 lining up for this start. Jim Judd, Wayne Clark, Robert Holden, none of those featuring in the major placings. Neil Chivers, of course, the man on 56 who won it. Rod Cox came in fifth place on 34. Len Willing came home second behind Chivers. Robbie Phillips rode beautifully in the Swan heat earlier today. Perot was the man who came fourth in the first heat, and Richard Scott just in front of him in third place. And we look at Willing.
And the interesting fact here is that Neil Chivers, after winning the first leg on his own 750 Suzuki, actually blew that bike up in a subsequent open class race, and has been lent another 750 Suzuki by the Team Matic squad. So it's actually Team Matic lending the opposition a machine, which is a very sporting of them. Of course, the one thing that Matic probably are worried about is that both machines are on Pirelli tyres anyway. So that's Chivers on a borrowed bike for this second race.
28 pulled up there was Trevor Sims, 900 Kawasaki, and we're looking right in the foreground at Robert Doran, who from South Australia was Rookie of the Year in the RZ Masters Series. A youngster who's showing great promise, and I think being fairly sensible in this sort of hot company. In other words, taking it steadily. They decide to start the race themselves, the riders. That is a very poor start. Richard Scott and Ian Perot just bolt from the field, and the field, frankly, should be pulled up. And the starters are discussing it. One rider hasn't even left the grid. He's discussing it. Others are doing the same. And red flag. It's a non-start. So Ian Perot and And some of them already realise it round the back. Rod Cox does on 34, and so it should. Should never have been got away.
And
that was just burglary.
Richard Scott will be cursing again because, I mean, he wasn't one of the worst defenders there, and he'd make a good start in the first leg when it was stopped because of an accident, and he lost out in the second, in the rerunning, when he didn't get so well away. So that's for the second time today. Scott has got a good start, and it's going to be no use to him whatsoever.
You can judge it for yourself. Let's have a look at it again. Remember that the flag really only waved when the riders had started to move, and you can see, look at 36 going for his life, and Len Willing was well away. So here they come forming up again, and the two reasons for riders being so keen to get away: one is it's a very hard circuit to overtake, and the other is that they want to keep clear of any possible first lap, first corner melee.
And of course it's very lucky, in fact, for number 56 here, who is Neil Chivers, because he didn't make that original start. Now as we see him come round, I wonder whether that is the bike he's borrowed from Matic, or in fact, yes, it looks as though it is, because he's put his own fairing on a different top half. So I would guess that is a spare Matic machine. That's only a guess though, and in fact he'd missed the original start, so we're hoping that
he doesn't get this one.
No, he doesn't. He misses it again.
It's Len Willing bolts again very well. Ian Perrow and Richard Scott are absolutely line ball with him, but it'll be Willing first in to the first corner, and indeed that's the way it happens. And Chivers is way back, just crossing the start-finish line now. It'll be interesting to see what he can do as the race goes on. You'll see him just flashing there by a flag barrier way back, and at this stage it's Perrow and it's Chivers.
Chivers has crashed, trying to make up that ground on the opening lap. He's crashed, so that was a pretty disastrous race, and that's really knocked his chances in the series to 6. 15 points for a win and then nothing.
Half a lap behind the field. Neil Chivers trying to catch them down and off the bike. Didn't come under starters' orders, so probably wasn't even technically a runner in the field, as Perrow leads Len Willing from Richard Scott. First time across the start-finishing line, averaging 109 kilometres an hour, 52.76. It's Ian Swift in third place, perhaps now in front of Richard Scott. Let's see, on 5. No, Scott hanging on, Swift 4.
So Perrow now leading, and Perrow said he suffered in the first leg from a bad start, and then he just didn't, he said, get to grips with things and get past the Honda. So now he's out in front, and we'll see what he can do.
Yes, Perrow had a bike in the 250 race that was jumping out of fourth gear, and he looked over to this big bike just before the start and said, now we'll have to see what we can do with this one. The man who's dominated Australian production racing this year, as well as very high up in the RZ 350cc Masters series, the Yamaha series, and he's done a great job. 49.02 second that lap time, 117.4 kilometres an hour.
And Willing takes the lead. Yes, Willing, very nice manoeuvre from Len Willing there. He wasn't any faster than Perrow down the straight, but he just pulled out of his slipstream at the end and got past him on the brakes. A beautiful manoeuvre. And they seem, if anything, to be getting away from Scott, these two. The two 900cc water-cooled Kawasaki's getting away from the 750cc water-cooled Yamaha.
Lap record held by Malcolm Campbell at 49 seconds. So right on the lap record. On that previous lap, Perrow. Now, down the main straight they come.
Willing really with the bit between his teeth. Seems to be getting away from Perrow.
And leading the rest of the bunch, fifth place in other words at this stage, Rod Cox, 34 on the Honda, that came in fifth in the previous heat. There you see him leading up the back straight too. From on 013, Grant Bartholomew. 11 in there is Jim Judd. And in fact, under Bartholomew's bike, who was starting to patter, 48.14 second lap, so as I read it, by my timing, I think Len Willing would have the new lap record. That's, of course, dependent on what's happened earlier today.
And Scott now closing in on Perrow. He's a little bit far behind to pick up the slipstream of the Kawasaki.
0.84 of a second only separate these three. Willing, Scott looking for a way through, but not able to get it, but beautifully positioned. Classic line into the bottom corner, in behind Ian Perrow. 750 Yamaha, 900 Kawasaki in front.
Scott Scott tries to outbrake him and succeeds in doing so. Difficult manoeuvre at that position, but he really did that absolutely beautifully. He ran wide coming out of the corner, but he knew there was no way Pero could get back past again.
Ian Swift.
That's Scott now, number 5 on the Team Matic Yamaha, up into second place.
Swift losing contact with the bunch. There you see him back in 4th. And then Rod Cox leading the bunch in 5th.
And it looks as though Scott and perhaps Pero are closing once more on Willing as Pero tries to go for the inside but can't, and Scott dives across his nose.
120 horsepower from the 900 Kawasaki's, but a heavier machine than the 206 kilogram FZ Yamaha that Richard Scott's riding, and which gives off, believe it or not, from 750 cc's, 100 horsepower.
And Pero tried to redo to Scott what had been done to him a lap before, but Scott's bike a little bit lighter, and Scott was able to get on the brakes a little bit later, and therefore fended off Pero's challenge for his hard-won second place.
Being production road bikes, they're not allowed to race on slicks. They're on treaded production tyres. And 1 second only between the three of them. Willing 49, Scott 5, and Pero 13. Kawasaki sandwiching a Honda. It's the filling at the moment.
So now 49, the Kawasaki still leading, but the 750 Yamaha closing up all the time as Scott extracts every ounce of power from it. I
don't think you ever get the impression of just how quickly and how precisely they have to change line there as they go from fully cranked over one way, absolutely to the fraction of a second, lift it up, dump it down the other way, and do it on the one hand very firmly and smartly, but on the other not such jarring the bike such that you start it sliding.
Now, as we see Willing take his usual tight line, as Scott goes a little bit wider, trying to get a better acceleration drive out of the corner so he can try that overtaking manoeuvre at the end of the back straight again. He's close now on Willing, almost being able to pick up the slipstream. He won't be able to pass him this lap, though.
Richard Scott 3rd in the first Regina Chains heat today. Then Willing 2nd. And Pero 4th.
And these three men all are very, very fine riders indeed. There's not much to choose between them, if anything. And Scott just now has to try and find a fractional advantage, but if anything, Willing's pulled away a little.
Can scrape the foot pegs on the Yamaha as you go around the corner, and no man's trying harder to do it than Richard Scott.
And he's right behind Willing now. Will he be able to pick up the slipstream of the Kawasaki? That's crucial if he's going to overtake him, and of course this is even more crucial as they come up on the back markers. That could really upset things as Scott goes to the inside.
First back marker is Russell Stevenson, 85.
And Willing just cut him off at the pass there as they close up on the back markers, and Pero closes in as well as Scott takes the advantage, goes one side, Willing the other, but Willing holds on to the lead. Incredible stuff.
And
each
coming
side
up
of that back marker
to lap Ken Isbister from West Australia. And a fall there in the S's. That's from Mark Fisher from Canberra, 750 Suzuki.
Now all three men close together as Pero now gets back into second place. I think superb outbraking manoeuvre. Pero gets back in front of Scott.
9 completed, 15 remain. They're on their 10th.
So Willing, 49, leads from 13 Pero, both on the 900 Kawasaki's. And Pero has his sights set on that first place.
Yes, he sure does. Willing, although he won all 5 rounds, 5 heats of the Regina Chains series last year, hasn't dominated Australian production racing this year. Paul Feeney, for instance, as you see his bike moving around there on the drag racing slick oil and rubber that's at the start of the straight. Willing has been far from having it all his own way, as there's just 3/4 of a second separating these three riders after 10 laps, 16 kilometres of racing.
And they're going to be catching up on another tail ender, and this could be very interesting. It's number 10, the man we saw earlier having fallen off. He's going to be caught in the middle of the S's by Willing, but surely will slow him up and allow Pero and Scott to get closer. who's going to pick? And Willing goes inside, Perrault goes inside. That leaves Scott balked. So Scott unfortunately missed out then and lost 10 yards on the two Kawasaki's. But he picks up a slipstream from the Suzuki as we watch the leader 49, Len Willing, leading from Ian Perrault. Perrault goes to the inside line, can't do it. Still Willing leads.
Don't they look relaxed and poetical, glorious there, but the bike is on the absolute limits of adhesion, and that flapping of the knees is an involuntary reflex as the riders are changing up cogs. Snap, snap, snap. And then, of course, they sit up to increase the air drag on the bike to help slow it down when they brake. With that glorious precision through the S's, lifting them from one corner to the other. A very physical sport, riding a race motorbike, moving around in the saddle. Where you move and when you move determines how quickly you go. As they come up to lap Peter Anson on 59, and on 49, Len Willing, the man leading the pack through. Richard Scott, the tail end of the three-bike sandwich. Perrault in the middle.
Perrault hasn't yet managed to find any method of getting past Willing. It's going to be very tricky because both Willing, riding for Kawasaki Australia, very, very experienced man. Perrault's going to really have to pull something out of the bag. And neither of them can afford to ease off a fraction because Scott is right there as well, closing up once more on Perrault. Tucked in behind the little fairing of the Yamahas and Kawasaki's.
And half a second now separate the three of them as Richard Scott fights from behind, Willing trying to cover from the front, and in the middle, not knowing whether he's about to attack or be attacked, Ian Perrault.
And only a lap and a half to go now. So it's getting to a desperate situation for Scott if he's going to win this one. Scott runs wide, ready to get the drive out of the corner. He's right on the tail, front tyre almost touching the rear of the Kawasaki so that he can get in the slipstream as they take the last lap flag. Only one lap to go as Willing leads, but it's Scott now looking for an outbraking manoeuvre that could take him past Perrault. Goes through a wide line, he can't make it there. He's going to have to try it at the end of the back straight. This was the manoeuvre that he did successfully a few laps ago. Willing getting away now in first place as Scott sizes up Perrault.
But in fact, Perrault worrying about Scott. That's all he could do at this stage, but Scott's got him.
No, he hasn't.
No. Ian Perrault across on the classical wide line entry to the corner. But that man, Willing, has got away as these two cover each other and try and stop one from getting past the other. Stephen Cooper, the man being lapped on 12. But Len Willing has capitalised beautifully on bike number 39, and from second place in the first of the Regina Chains heats, he takes victory in the second by 1.3 seconds from Ian Perrault second on yet another Kawasaki, and in third place Richard Scott on Yamaha number 5.
Well, that was an absolutely superb display of riding, I think, from those three men. They shake hands after a race in which neither gave or asked any quarter. They're all very pleased to have finished that one in one piece. Very, very exciting.
What comes out of it is that Willing has 27 points in the series. Yes, 27th from second on 12 points and first on 15 in the first heat. But then Perrault and Richard Scott both have 20 as they go into the second round of the series next week at Oran Park.
And the interesting thing as far as Scott is concerned is that he is sure that that the Yamaha will be better at the next two racetracks. It will be better at Oran Park, and it will be absolutely the best machine to be on, he thinks, at surface. So although Scott is down on points at the moment with respect to Willing, he's sure that it isn't a deficit that's impossible to make up.
Not so very badly placed either is the man who fell in that heat, and that was Neil Chivers. He's got 15 from victory in round one, so he's lying 4th in the series at this stage, and 5th behind him would be...
Of course, Chivers must be absolutely heartbroken having missed out on the second leg. There's a man staring down at the surface there. It's possible, of course, that there was some oil dropped by one of the 4 strokes in that race, but he's not doing anything about it. Perhaps it's a little bit of the track surface being picked up anyway.
The winner of the first round of the Regina Chain Series for 1985, just as he was in 1984, Len Willing. But Len, you haven't won both heats today.
Well, if you remember, there was only one here last year, but yeah, well, it's getting harder. We're on the bike that's 2 years old compared to stuff that's new, but the rest of the series is wide apart. It'll be a terrific one.
Top racing, it really was. It must have been hard out there for you.
Very hard out there, very, very hard.
And to present you with your trophy for your win today, your former boss, Chris Matic, the marketing manager of Matic Australia.
Congratulations, Len. We've done this before. I'm sure it's going to be hard for the rest of the series. Thanks, Len.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Lenny, just as we talk, we noticed a little bit of rain starting to fall on the circuit. Were you noticing it on the track?
Yeah, I think so. Until I have a look at the lap times, I'm not 100% sure, but it was much slippery through the S's.
And that's going to make it very difficult now as the riders prepare to go out for the Bob Jane T-Mart Series for 350cc Grand Prix machines.